Hey folks, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel, and oh my goodness, we are finally getting back on track. But before I talk about this week's episode, I do, as always, want to give a big thank you to those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter. At BubbaLubber, at Matt87Eagle, at IanSay1, at Similarity, and at SunYuChan353. Thank you all so much for sharing last week's video over on Twitter, everybody, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Ascendance of a Bookworm video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout out the first 5 of you in next week's video. Okay, so there were 2 big alarm bells going off for me when I went into this episode. 2 big ones. So the first was seeing the title, New Retainers, and I'm thinking like, no, please, I just barely got used to the retainers you've thrown at me at the start of the season. Gil is okay, Delia's still kind of annoying, and Fran I flip-flop on. I just got used to them. Please don't throw new ones at me. Thankfully, as we'll get into, one of them's not new. One of them is Wilma, who we've known for a while but wasn't technically a retainer, just a character that we knew. And then the other one we'll get into in just a sec. But yeah, so on that front I was like, oh phew, as I'm watching the episode. The second thing that I couldn't help but notice is in our Discord, the Good Folks Discord, which is linked in the description if you want to join and show everybody how dang cool you are, you can join the Discord. But in said Discord, in the anime section, I couldn't help but notice the amount of talk of Ascendance of a Bookworm with a bunch of spoiler tags hidden. So I didn't see any of the spoilers, I just saw Ascendance of a Bookworm thoughts and then a block of the covered spoilers. So I was like, okay, something's happening this week, and I don't know what it could be, but between the title and all the spoiler tags, I was very concerned that it was going to be like an episode that I was going to hate or something. So color me surprised when I entered the episode and found it is just continuing the trend from last week. It's not as good as last week's episode, but it's really strong. And in fact, I would actually argue that it's better, it's more tightly written than last week's was. Last week, I still think it was a good episode because it focused on the downtown characters, which we haven't seen for a while. So I was just sort of relieved that the show was getting back to basics. And this episode really pushes the show more in that direction where it's like, no, we're gonna keep going with the stuff that you remember from the start of the series. The reason why you got into this friggin' thing. Mine wants to make books again. It's something that hasn't really happened in a while. We also get to see characters who, while they may start off as very standoffish for one reason or another, you actually do grow to understand why they behave that way. It's not just they're douchey at the start and you have to put up with it for episodes upon episodes until we finally tell you. No, this is more back to season 1 where it's no, we'll explain why and we'll give you reasons to like them while still understanding that they have flaws. This is way more of what I want to see. Rosina in particular is the star of this week's episode. Rosina is without a doubt the best part, but before we get into that, I do want to talk about the fact that the show is actually veering more towards the thing that we all wanted to see in the first place, at least as far as I can tell from Discord plus the handful of tweets I've seen. Mine making books. Mine's gonna be making books again. Oh my god. That's all I wanted from the show. When I heard that, I was like, oh, yay! I got genuinely excited. Not only because, awesome, Effa, as it turns out, Mine's mom, if you've forgotten, I forget Effa's name all the friggin' time, and I feel bad for it. But Effa's pregnant. Oh my god, that's friggin' fantastic. And I was all excited. I was like, Mine's gonna be an older sister. That's kind of crazy. That's awesome. And that's when Mine gets the idea, hey, I'm going to make a picture book for the kid. And I was like, oh my god, that is not only super sweet, and I was getting all in my emotions. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is awesome. This is so great. But it shows a growth for Mine, because don't forget, season 1, Mine was a jerk. All this character cared about was books. And if you read the early chapters of the light novel like I did before dropping the dang thing, Mine is a straight up jerk. Just straight up cruel. All she gives a damn about is books. At the very least, the anime tried to paint her a little bit more sympathetic in the early chapters. I assume she gets better as she goes, but it's why I didn't read the book, because mine is a super big jerk in the beginning. All she gives a damn about is books. Now, she still cares about books. That's still like her top priority, but the fact that she's like, I'm going to make a picture book for the kid. When the kid gets here, I want them to have something to not only like look at and be entertained, but also I want to share my passion with the kid. Like, that is such a huge growth moment for mine. I was so impressed by that. Loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Every part of the picture book, I do wish the episode almost focused on it more, but at the same time, the stuff that we do focus on is so good that I don't care. But it was just like an awesome little character beat. And on top of that too, it also introduces us back to Wilma, which I really like. Wilma is the character who we see make the flashcards for the kids in the orphanage. She's the one who can draw. So when mine realizes, like, okay, I need to make the picture book. In order to make the picture book, I need to be good at art. Benno basically tells mine straight up that your writing's great, but your art sucks. So she's not drawing it. So of course that leads us back to Wilma, who we established early on. Lovely. Like, establish this nice character in the background, have them sort of ruminate for a bit, like just be a background bit player until we eventually have a genuine need for them and they got reintroduced into the grand narrative. Loved it. Solid character writing, solid narrative. Oh my god. Like, did somebody take over? Like, did somebody... Okay, this has me believing that maybe it's not series comp and it's just individual episode writers who are garbage or great. I don't know. But this episode had such strong, I don't know, just callbacks, character, like the overall character narrative, the overall, like, just general, like, focus of the episode was so much tighter and more well-constructed than the last couple episodes have been. Like, this is fantastic. I was so ecstatic with the picture book element and mine actually sort of trying to ingratiate herself more into noble culture, which leads us into the second part of the episode and the other thing that I wanted to talk about this week. Mine slowly attempting to become more of a nobility type, and not so much in a desire to be nobility, but as much as to protect her from nobility, which is very interesting because mine is being told by Ferdinand that she has to practice music. And I don't know if you have ever had to, like, learn an instrument. Shit is hard. Like, it's very difficult. And then being forced to practice an instrument is even worse, because if you have no drive to learn that instrument, it makes actually learning and practicing 10 times harder because your heart's not in it, which means you're not going to try as hard. So I do feel for mine being forced to learn how to play music. However, I will say that the instrument in question is very interesting looking. It's sort of like a harp mixed with like a lute. It's really, really interesting. I actually kind of dig it. Like, it's very Ascendance of a Bookworm, and it looks, I don't know, it just looks cool. It sounds very pretty. It sounds mostly like, it sounds less like a harp and more like sort of an acoustic guitar, but I guess that's where the lute element comes in. It's very, very interesting. And what I love is the fact that mine is thinking, like, man, I have to practice this instrument. I don't want to do that. It's going to keep me away from my books. It's like, I don't want to do this, blah, blah, blah. And Ferdinand ends up just, like, cracking out one of these, what is it, like a harpspiel? I don't remember what it's called. Something like that. He busts out one of these instruments, and he can, like, carry a tune. And I was like, whoa, Ferdy, look at you go. And yes, I'm going to be calling him Ferdy from now on, just because. But yeah, Ferdy just cracks out a little ditty, and I was like, oh my god, he's really good. And by the end of the episode, mine's pretty good herself. Like, these characters can carry a tune. I was so impressed, especially Ferdinand. I don't know why that caught me off guard, but this man has like a whole, like, well, not a whole song, but like a small refrain that he plays to show mine, like, what it's like to play this instrument. And he tries to, like, sort of teach her the basics a little bit before Rosina comes in and takes over full time. But it was just really neat to see this artsy side of Ferdinand. Good old Ferdy, impressing me a little bit, even though I still think he's kind of a jerk. But he is trying. And I will say, one of the more interesting episodes of the one of the most interesting elements of the episode, this little small aside that I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit concerned about, but overall, like, I'm more intrigued by, and that's Ferdy telling Mine that he's actually trying to protect her. By learning music and becoming more ingratiated in nobility and the culture that surrounds these nobles, she might actually be able to protect herself when the time eventually comes where she gets to an age where she's going to have a bunch of nobles throwing themselves at her so that they can... Basically, she even says, like, what, I'm just like a baby maker for these people? And, like, yeah, unfortunately so. That is the dark side of nobility. Because of Mine's inherent, like, mana, because it's so intense, nobles will want to have her as their bride so that they can give, give their kid an immense mana, which would only further push them into higher society, even more power, even more nobility. It's a mess, and it does make me a little bit uncomfortable, especially when Mine says, like, I don't want to leave my family. It concerns me. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit concerned, but we're only on episode 7 of season 2. I'm sure that's a ways off. I'm before we have to start worrying about that. But I do like that they're introducing this element of, like, uncertainty now, so it can build and build and build until eventually something pops off. So I will give them credit there. I was very intrigued. Ferdy actually showing that he cares, even though he can be a douche. But yeah, that was really impressive. And above all else, I think the most interesting thing that I want to talk about, and I'm saving the best for last, is Rosina. Rosina is 110% the best part of this episode. Rosina, I almost thought was like nobility at some point, because just by the way that she was sort of like her demeanor, her skill with the instrument, I thought perhaps like she was some sort of nobility. And it wasn't like a far stretch to me, because it's like, okay, like based off the context clues that we're given, that would make sense. But as it turns out, no, not quite. The actual truth is that Lady Katarina? Baccarina? No, I don't remember. I think it was Catherine, like Lady something or other. She was one of the one of the blue robes, and she eventually left to go back to the noble life, and left her retainers behind and sent them back to the orphanage. But while she was there, she was incredibly kind and really took care of Wilma and Rosina, because they had an aptitude for the arts. Since this noble was very much interested in the arts, she would take on retainers that had those type of skills and really take care of them, essentially coddling them. So by the time we actually get to Rosina becoming a retainer for Mine, she's not used to that type of servitude. She's used to being like well taken care of. And what I love is that they give you these little signs where you're like, oh, okay, that's weird. That's a weird, like, she's kind of a jerk, but she doesn't necessarily, at the same time, there's something about her that you don't feel like she is inherently bad, just making poor decisions in terms of being polite. And that's what I loved, is she does come off like a little bit of a snot-nosed brat, like she's a bit of a brat, but at the same time, she doesn't come off as inherently just mean and sadistic like Gil and Delia and Fran came off as when we were first introduced to them. Rosina actually just comes off as just kind of a jerk who just needs to have like a slight attitude adjustment, and then eventually might become a really sweet person to interact with the gang. In fact, she starts off being really sweet to Mine right off the pop, and it doesn't feel disingenuous. This character shocked me. We don't even really spend a whole ton of time with Rosina. It doesn't take a lot. You can have... Simplicity can sometimes be better than complexity in this specific case, because this very simple little character arc for this character was some of the best character stuff I've personally seen this season. I think Rosina might be my favorite of like the church crew, just because it's a simple little story. It feels totally natural that she would behave this way. It feels totally natural how things are resolved by the end. The fact that she would want to stick around and help out Mine, because not only has she been around Mine and knows that Mine's a good person, but also because it allows her to continue to play the instrument that she cares about so dearly, and it's easily going to set her up for some great character stuff down the line. The only part of the episode, and I do mean the only part of the episode, that might have me concerned is the new element introduced with Wilma, because yikes, but I'm not gonna judge anything until I actually see how they handle this new character development for Wilma, because honestly, they have regained my trust. Not only with Rosina, but with this episode as a whole. I'm back in, 100%. With that said, everybody, I'm going to wrap up my thoughts here. Question of the day today, do you guys play an instrument? If so, which instrument? Let me know in the comments below. And with that said, we've reached the end of the video, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, then don't forget to boop the up snoot and share if you care. And if you want to see me rambling even more, then feel free to follow me on Twitter or join our good folks Discord, both of which are linked in the doobly-doo. Lastly, if you're feeling generous, consider checking out our Patreon page to help support this channel. Speaking of which, I'd like to give a big thank you to our lovely patrons, such as Izevi, Alex, Andrew W., Branson C., Calvin A., Crowbar of Irony, Daniel G., Deep Not That Deep, Digger the Fox, Dominic G., Emily, Ionos, Urza, Ginkotaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria T., Marshall B., Mater, Mirth Mouser, Nymad, Cell, Shadow Creative, Stephen G., The Suavest Orange, Tristan G., and Veridon. Thank you all so much for your continued support over on Patreon, and once again, thank you for checking out today's video. Hope you guys have a lovely day, and until next time, you stay classy, AniTube, and wash your dang hands.